father stands in silence. His house is gone. His wealth is gone. His health is gone. And somewhere beneath the rubble are the bodies of all 10 of his children. No sermon could explain it. No friend could fix it. But what happened next shook heaven itself, because the man fell on his knees and worshipped. Now here's the question that has haunted people for thousands of years. Why would God allow this to happen to one of the most righteous men on earth? And perhaps an even harder question: if everything you loved vanished today, right now, would your faith survive? There was once a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. The Bible describes him with words rarely used of any person: blameless and upright. He was wealthy beyond imagination, with thousands of animals, many servants, 10 children. A good life. If anyone looked blessed by God, it was Job. But things take a shocking turn, because while Job was enjoying peace on earth, trouble was brewing in heaven. One day Satan appeared before God, and God pointed to Job. "Have you considered my servant Job?" Imagine that. God himself highlights Job as an example. But Satan answered with an accusation. In essence, he said, "Of course Job serves you. You've blessed him. You've protected him. You've prospered him. But take all that away, and he'll curse you to your face." Suddenly, the issue becomes, if the blessings disappeared, would God still be enough? Remember that question, because everything that follows revolves around it. The day hell broke loose. Then came the worst day of Job's life. A servant arrived running. Raiders had stolen all of Job's livestock. Another servant arrived. Fire had consumed all of Job's sheep. Another came. Job's camels were all gone. Another came. More servants were dead. And then the final messenger arrived. A great wind had struck the house where Job's children were gathered. The building collapsed. Every son, every daughter, gone. Can you see Job standing there? One messenger after another. One disaster after another. No time to process anything. No time to breathe. Just wave after wave after wave of loss. And then, silence. What would you do? Would you walk away? Abandon your faith? Or curse God? Job fell to the ground and blessed God. He said, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." The man who had just lost everything still recognized that God was worthy of worship, not because life made sense, but because God was still God. The second blow. Satan returned and made another accusation. "Skin for skin," that devil said. "Touch his body, and he will curse you." So God allowed another test. Suddenly, painful sores covered Job from head to toe. This man who sat among princes now sat in ashes, an object of pity, a broken man. Even his wife cried out, "Curse God and die." But Job refused. What kind of faith survives when even God is silent? Because at this point, God has not explained anything. Not one answer. Not one word. Only pain and a searing silence. The friends arrive. Then 3 friends appeared. And at first, they did exactly the right thing. For 7 days, no speeches or explanations, just presence. Sometimes that's the greatest gift we can offer someone who is suffering. But then they opened their mouths and everything changed. This is the point where many people misunderstand the book of Job. The friends sounded spiritual. Their arguments sounded logical. Some of what they said was even partially true. But their conclusion was completely wrong. Like many of us, the friends believed something very simple. Good people prosper, bad people suffer. Therefore, if Job is suffering, Job must be guilty of something. Again and again they accused him, not directly at first, but the implication was clear. Confess your hidden sin, because God wouldn't let this happen if you were guiltless. Have you ever read the book of Job and wondered, why did God rebuke these men? Weren't they only trying to defend him? Listen carefully. God did not rebuke them for trying to defend his justice. God rebuked them for claiming to know things God had never told them. Instead of inquiring from God, they simply presumed to understand what was happening. And they were wrong. Have you been guilty of this? Seeing people suffer and assuming, because obedience brings blessing, their suffering must equal punishment. But Job's suffering was never punishment. In fact, God himself had declared Job righteous. My friend, not every storm is punishment. Not every hardship is judgment. And not every suffering saint is under God's wrath. Job cried. He asked God why. He poured out his pain. Yet the Bible repeatedly says Job did not sin in any of this. Why? Because Job brought his complaints to God, not against God. There is a difference. The friends talked about God. Job talked to God. The friends did not seek answers. Job sought answers. One posture was pride. The other was faith. Even in agony, Job kept turning to God. He declared, "Though he slay me, I will still trust in him." These words still echo through heaven and throughout history. When you walk through the darkest of dark times, faith in God will be your light. It will always take you to safety on the other side. The moment God speaks, then suddenly, God answered. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Can you command the morning? Can you guide the stars? Can you control the sea? One question after another, and slowly Job realized something. God wasn't revealing the reason behind the suffering. He never did. God was revealing himself. And Job saw what he could not see before. The God who governs galaxies had not lost control of his life, even in the darkness. Not for one moment. Remember the question from the beginning. Why did Job endure all this? Satan said, "Take away the gifts," and Job would abandon God. But Job proved something that shut him up. God is worthy of worship. Even when all the gifts are gone, even when we have no answers and the suffering remains, that is faith. Not pretending everything is fine, not needing to understand every circumstance, but trusting the character of God when you cannot see his hand. Conclusion. In the end, God restored Job. His fortunes returned, his family grew again, and his life was even more greatly blessed. But the greatest gift Job received wasn't restoration. It was revelation. Earlier Job had known facts about God. Now he knew God, for he said, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." That's the greatest fortune of all. It is easy to cling to God in prosperity, but do we cling to him in suffering? Both have their purpose in God's divine plan. Maybe you're watching this today and life doesn't make sense. Prayers seem unanswered, and heaven feels silent. Or maybe you've asked the same question Job asked. Why? The book of Job points us to the God who sees what we cannot. The God who remained sovereign over every moment of Job's suffering. The God who ultimately stepped into human suffering himself through Jesus Christ. It points to a Savior who was righteous, yet suffered. A Savior who was rejected, afflicted, and wounded. A Savior who trusted the Father, even when darkness covered the sky. And because of Christ, our suffering is never meaningless. Our pain is never unseen. And our story is never over. So if you're walking through a trial today, hold on. Because the God who held Job is still holding his people. And in due time, we will finally discover that God himself is more than enough. So, beloved, stay encouraged and hold on.